you know, pause for a moment when you see something happen. Like a great example is look at what just happened with Verafin. Okay. Now everybody is looking at it and they're reading about it. I look at it from a different angle. I say, okay, huh, how can that benefit the greater Newfoundland ecosystem, or better yet, the Atlantic Canadian ecosystem? What has happened there? What about that purchase is unique? Because I'm certain Verafin had some secret sauce, but it's nothing that couldn't have been discovered out of Silicon Valley, right? So why in the Christ did NASDAQ see so much excitement in Verafin? I think I know the answer to that. And it was not only the secret sauce and what they were doing in terms of technology, but it was also the people that were in the back end of this thing. And if you look at the company and you say, okay, well, what's going to make my company tick? It's going to be the people, right? It's going to be, if I can't get the people engaged in doing what I need to get done, if I don't have a stable workforce in place, then the secret sauce doesn't really matter,
No.
right? But I think that's what Verafin had, and I think that's what Atlantic Canada has. So Atlantic Canada has, in my opinion, a pretty stable and loyal workforce, albeit we may not have academic programs and stuff that might support that yet, but they didn't in Silicon Valley 40 years ago either,
No.
right? So if you start to look at things that happen around you from a different angle and then look at it and say, okay, how can other companies benefit and celebrate that, right? And that to me, so Verafin to me represents exactly that. And then if you couple that on top of, look what's happened in this global pandemic. I mean, Atlantic Canada created a tiny little bubble. Yeah. There was economic challenges associated with that. But for every economic challenge, Gerry, you and I can point out 10 companies that thrived in the middle of it. You just told me of one. Thrived in the middle of this economic challenge. Why did they thrive in the middle of this? Because what we have here is something other people want. People want to come to Atlantic Canada. They want to come to Atlantic Canada because people realize now you don't need to be in Toronto to do
No.
business,
No.
right? You can easily live on Ross Road, have a wonderful lifestyle, drive your kids to school, be home for breakfast with your wife before she might go out. Like all of the things that if you were to close your eyes and say, what's the perfect scenario? You can have right now. So these companies need to be telling that story differently, not just about what I have. Here's my secret sauce. You want to buy it. You got to look at it very differently. And
Wow.
but to me, it's about looking at what's happening around you, right? And then maybe that's what it is. It's being aware of what's happening around you. When something happens, what in there is the unique value proposition? Whether it's the Verafin piece, whether it's just new technology and how it can apply to something around me, whatever the case may be. Why are they having so much success? Why all of a sudden is Newfoundland having a real estate boom when all things being equal, Gerry, they should not be? Without oil and gas, what other resources and markets does Newfoundland have? With fisheries and all, I get all of that, right? But on the outside looking in, there's not much there that would indicate a real estate boom. Yet it's happening. And I know why it's happening. I'm pretty certain I know why it's happening. Because the people there are good, decent people. It's a good way of life there. People want to be a part of that. People want that in their life. And
Oh,
what a safe landing this is.
um, you just reminded me. I was at a restaurant one time, and there was a man sitting next to me who I knew. Their office was overlooking Conception Bay. So picture that. I can't remember the name of the exact part of the Conception Bay it was. Yeah. So anyway, he's sitting there and he's having a chat. Of course, you're in a restaurant, and this guy across from him is trying to pitch him to move his company, lock, stock, and barrel, to Montreal. And I'm sitting there with one ear listening to this, and they're talking loud enough where I'm not, yeah, okay, I'm eavesdropping, but shit, man, it was a phenomenal conversation. This is maybe 20 years ago. Anyway, you know what he said? He's a French man. I don't know if he grew up in Montreal or if he's from Paris. I can't remember. Why would I ever want to move my business to Montreal? He said, I currently have a business that overlooks the ocean.
Yeah.
My team can see whales jumping. He said the creative juices that flow because of that are off the charts. And I'm thinking, wow.
Yeah,
Right?
100%. And I think that that's why Atlantic Canada, in my opinion, is prime to, if they're smart about it, they're primed to tell this story. And they should be telling this story. Housing is cheap, the people are lovely, the culture is remarkable, Gerry. It's remarkable. I've traveled all over the world, as have you, and the culture in Atlantic Canada is a beautiful thing. There's no doubt about it. There's music, there's food, there's humor. We don't take ourselves serious. It's just.
I agree with you. And it's funny, Al, you get better weather than we do. I mean, weather is certainly a big challenge here. That being said, I'll never forget it. 2012, we're in San Francisco. I'm there with the family. I'm there for a conference, so I brought the family. 3:00 in the morning in the hotel, an alarm goes off.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't even know what the alarm was for. But I do know that in every washroom, you see, not just in case of fire, but in case of earthquake. And I'm thinking, okay, we're getting out of here. 3:00 in the morning, we go down the stairs. I'm carrying one of our children in my arms. And I'm thinking, in some places, you're only, a decade away from total devastation, potentially, And I think there's so much to be said for the quality of life in PEI, the quality of life in Atlantic Canada, downtown Montreal. And I look at the lineups, in trying to get into a restaurant and all that, you don't have any of that here.
No, and the interesting thing is, I live in Charlottetown, and I would argue, well, up until this pandemic, but I would argue I spent more time downtown Toronto than most people who live in Mississauga did. And I'm an hour and a half flight away. The airport is 4 minutes from my house. I arrive at the airport 15 minutes before the flight goes. I get off the flight in Toronto. I get on a train. I'm downtown within 25 minutes. You could hardly do that if you lived in Mississauga.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, well, you couldn't do it in most cases.
Well, it's funny. I think about airplanes and the airport. I remember being on a conference call with Montreal, and I said, "Oh, gotta go." I said, "My plane leaves in 30 minutes." And the lady was like, "What do you mean your plane leaves in 30 minutes?" She goes, "Boarding?" And I said, No. Boarding is like in 5 minutes. The plane leaves in 30 minutes." And she goes, "Gerry, you're going to miss it." So no, I'm not. I'm literally about 5 minutes away. And I said, I will walk up the escalator, show my boarding pass, and be the last person on the plane. And that's the way I used to do it. I hated sitting around in the airport. Now, there was a couple of times I got burned a little bit when there was a few other flights, but most of the time my flights were at a time when there was only one plane. The concept for that person in Montreal, where I could literally leave my house and be on a plane flying within 30 minutes, was very difficult. Very difficult for them. But, it's convenience. Okay, you live in a big city and you get all the opportunity for entertainment and all that, but there's some incredible entertainment we get.
But again, Gerry, to that point exactly, I hear that all the time. Oh, you live in Toronto, you can go to sport. Fuck, I've been to more Blue Jays games than most guys who live in Toronto.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Honest to Jesus, come on, fellas.
Yeah.
You live there, you don't go.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, right? Anyway, yeah. thriving. It's thriving. It's thriving in it's thriving in remoteness is what it is, right? It's thriving in remoteness. We're on remote little islands, and I mean, if you were to describe our life to somebody from Mumbai, to somebody from Beijing, to somebody even from Los Angeles, they'd scratch their head and they'd say, "You're kidding me. You live on an island with X number of people and you have two McDonald's restaurants, that's it, or whatever," right? You know, all of these things that might blow their mind. Yeah. And yet we do business across the globe quite successfully. And we're quite pleased with it. And when I want to take my kids to school, I do, right? In fact, that is one of the highlights. It actually is one of the highlights of my day every day is to drive my son to school. 100%. And always has been. I always loved taking my kids to school. Gave me that few minutes to have a conversation. I can do that because of where I live, right? I know that every day my wife can go see her aging mother every single day, right? And that's important to me. That's important to our family. So it's thriving in remoteness.
So, all right, cool.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
See you, buddy.